Hey everybody, welcome. It's been a while since I've been here. Good lord, it has to be, let me see here, just fixing up my screen. It has to be a while, right? I mean, at least several months. Maybe, I'd say 6 months that I've been live. I've been going through a real serious battle, and I've won that battle with the help of many people on the Druid Circle. I'm going to put a comment up if you guys don't mind, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin it so you guys know what I'm actually talking about. Give me 1 second here. There you go. Alright, it's pinned, so welcome everybody. I guess tonight's topic is going to be a very interesting one, and as you know, what I do is I take you on the path, and that is what I believe the Druids, the most holy ancient Druids, sorry about that, the most holy ancient Druids would have believed, okay? I take most of my information from books rather than online, and if I do take things online, it's not with personal blogs or anything like that. I usually take it from scholarly journal articles, and then I try to interpret that information and then feed it back out to you guys in a way that you can understand. Not necessarily dumbing it down, but trying to get the max out of the hour that we're going to have ahead of us. And so tonight's talk is going to be about belief and faith. And I'm thinking about this idea of belief and faith in terms of whether or not there's a difference, and then in that, whether or not there is some sort of a persuasion that the most holy ancient Druids would have had with regard to the idea of whether or not the Druids would have been men and women of belief or men and women of faith. There's not much written about women Druids. I do believe they existed, and I do believe that they had distinctions between male roles and female roles. I believe that Druids would have done one thing and females would have done another. That wouldn't have taken any emphasis off of what they did or how they performed ritual, but that they would have shared it in a way. There are a lot of people out there who don't believe in women Druids. I do. I don't know necessarily about the amount or the percentage, if you will, of how many male Druids there were to how many female Druids. And I think that a majority of the Druids, though, would have been male at the time. But anyway, I hope that you guys enjoy tonight's talk. I come to you as Druid Nicholas the Clan, founder of the Druid Circle, Druid Order of Blessed Stone and Wood, Druid University. So let's begin. What I want you to think about is what the difference is between the idea of faith and the idea of belief. Just for a second, just think of that. And as you're thinking about that, I think it's important that we begin to realize that, there has to be some sort of, difference, right? But if we look and we think about it in terms of dictionaries, there's hardly any difference. We're going to be reading from excerpts Faith versus Belief from Fritz Marti. And I want to begin with this paragraph as you guys are thinking about faith and belief. He writes, I should be at a loss for a word were I not to use the word faith, and were I not to use it in distinction from, nay, in opposition to, the word belief. I know that I have the authority of the dictionary against me, which explicitly lists the word belief as the synonym of faith. The Merriam-Webster enumerates several secular usages of the word faith. It also knows of no religious usage which would not say what belief says. So that in the dictionary world, faith and belief are synonyms. They can be used interchangeably, and they can be used at no distinction from one another. So, insofar that these ideas of faith and belief are floating around the dictionary world, intermingling with each other, I knew that there had to be a difference. If we think about it, and we think of this idea of faith and belief in a different term, in a different light, in a different way, and with different morphology, if you thought that these, if you will, that there is no difference, then think about it in terms of an invisible force. So if you're thinking about the idea that faith and belief are no different, then I want you to think about this. Think of it in terms of adding something to convince yourself that there is an absolute difference between faith and belief. When I say to you, belief in faith, and I just say it as that, it might be very difficult for you to really get a different feel. But if I use, instead of the verbal, meaning the verb itself, the action of belief and faith, or to have belief and to have faith, if we think about it prepositionally, we might have a different understanding of it. Think of it this way. And I'm just going to use the word God here, not because of anything, just to make it simpler so I don't have to say to God or gods of your understanding. But if you say belief in God, and you say faith in God, and you really sit there and ask yourself, if you hear something different, you should absolutely hear a difference that you wouldn't have been able to pick up if you were just to say belief and faith. That these two words are absolutely different, and that there's something that is more profound about one rather than the other. And that if we understand it from that light, that there is a profound difference between belief in and faith in, or having faith in or having belief in, then we must start thinking about it and saying, what is that difference? I'm going to read you another section from his thesis on page 30, and this is something that I need you to think about too. Listen to this. I submit that the word faith can point at a reality much deeper than belief, a reality in the face of which any belief no matter how solidly tested, appears hollow. I also submit that the quest for beliefs is likely to draw us away from the awareness of what is real in faith. The suspicion which the religious often display with regard to intellectuality is not entirely without ground. Belief is only an intellectual matter. So that it's basically saying that first and foremost, we have belief. That belief is rooted in what we know to be true. Okay? It is that baseline where we all start at, and from that we move to faith. Now that we know that, and we use belief as our baseline, belief as our grounding, belief as our basic tool or lowest common denominator that unites all of us, that belief turns into something more profound, and that is faith. And I'm going to show you why that is. Belief identifies a reality. Belief identifies a reality. Faith, on the other hand, does this. And this is what makes it so much different. So much more different than belief. And that is that faith, okay, is the awareness of that reality. So that belief is the reality, and that faith is the awareness of that reality, right? So that's what makes it more profound. That idea that faith itself, okay, that faith itself is, I guess in a way, more chaotic than the belief factor. And when we understand that the belief factor isn't as profound as the faith factor, we begin to start seeing that there is an additional step. I could believe something. It doesn't necessarily mean that I have faith in something. See what I'm saying? So why did this happen, and why is it that it seems like that each one rationalizes a different point? It seems that belief, okay, rationalizes the written and spoken word. That belief rationalizes the written and spoken word. It rationalizes it. It makes sense of it, right? It sort of takes any written or spoken word, the mythos, if you will. It takes that and it brings it to a fruition so that you can not only understand it, but understand it from a point of believing in it, right? But you're only doing it intellectually. Whereas faith is a little bit different. It rationalizes the object of the written and spoken word. It rationalizes the object of it, meaning that the written and spoken word says something, right? But that's all it is. It's just written, it's just spoken. That's all it is. It's written in oral tradition. Whereas faith moves you from the written and spoken word, and what it does is it presents to you the aim of that written and spoken word, the object of that written and spoken word. And in many cases, the object is something ethereal. It's something beyond us. It's something well beyond the concept of anything we can inherently rationalize. That's why when we believe in something, we are only rationalizing it insofar as a word, not the object of where those words take us. You see what I'm saying? If I could put it better to you, I would say that belief is dogma. Belief is dogma, right? It's what we are told to believe. It's what we're told to believe. And so when we think of it from that level, then it makes more sense to us. Whereas faith moves from dogma to acceptance of things that are. Dogma presents us with that baseline, presents us with the beginnings of things, the start of things. It's what you're taught at the lower levels of theology. It's what you're taught at the lower levels of anything that you're about to experience in your as your future self. But it doesn't go more than that. That's it. When we begin to say that we accept things, now we're moving into the, if you will, the theology of faith. And the theology of faith says that we are intrinsically knowledgeable that there's something in us, if you will, maybe even instead of saying dogma, say the Akashic records, right? What we already know that we're not aware of. And once we can accept that, now we're living by faith, not living by belief. I want to read you another section from this thesis. And again, Faith versus Belief by Fritz Marti. And this is pages 30 to 31. It says, those who assume that they are bringing about faith when they promote a belief not only hitch the cart before the horse, but endow the horse with the appearance of something made at will, like a cart. And faith cannot be had at will. Ecclesiastic tradition is quite right when it asserts that faith is a gift from that object we were talking about earlier, whatever that object is. Source. It's a gift that we receive from the God or gods of our understanding. And we all have the capability to live by faith. I would even go so far to say, and while I have a strong case against this, I would even go so far to say that even atheists have the potency to live by faith. Even they do. because they're aware that there are powers that exist, and things that exist in the world around them that they cannot actually make sense of. And they know that deep down inside. We, people of faith, Druids of faith, know that the old gods have taught this over and over and over and over and over again in the myth, in the folklore, right? In the tales. What is all that to us? Scripture, right? And so that mythos, okay, has been taught to us dogmatically, as in belief, but it's also encouraged us to live by faith, live by the object of the written word, of the spoken word. Are you getting it? If we take belief and we take faith, I'm going to sort of go down literally like a flow chart of how it looks like if we were to break it down on, say, a chalkboard. And you know me, I would love to have a chalkboard and be writing this stuff down for you guys so you could actually see what this looks like. But unfortunately, it's very difficult to write things down and not be able to do that. I don't have a studio and I'm not technical. So just try to follow my words and create pictures of those words in your head. Belief is steeped in will. Belief is steeped in will. You need will to believe. You need will to believe, right? Because it is made by force. It's told to us, right? How many stories of old, you know? I mean, the Witch of Rathdowny, the Children of Lear, right? How many of these stories are told to us, right? So that's basically like our dogma, right? The mythos is our dogma, right? But that's all belief, you know? Faith is steeped in allowance, right? We talked about the acceptance earlier of the object beyond that mythos, right? It's one thing to hear the story, it's one thing to see the story, but it's a completely different thing to live a story, to have enough faith in the story, knowing that what lies beyond that story actually exists. It's steeped in our allowance, our allowing ourselves to go blindly forward into a world of chaos. Because it is made by Source itself, God itself, the gods themselves, the pantheon itself, the pantheons themselves. And so when we think about this in that regard, we then are now digging into the meat and potatoes of what it is to be walking in belief and walking in faith. Okay? If you guys have any questions, please put them up and I'll answer them if I can. If I can't answer them here, I'll be able to answer them after I'm done my live. So, Fritz Marti, and I just want to see the date. This is 1946. And I was reading some other material too, but I mean, a lot of this is all really from the books that I've read on faith and belief and the journals and whatnot. But I really like what Fritz has to say here. He believes that there are three ways that we can distinguish faith and belief and faith. That there is this, that there's definitely a way to distinguish it. He says, number one, that faith is not identical with belief, but it is the ground of a type of mystical engagement. Listen to that again. Faith is not identical with belief, but is the ground of a type of mystical engagement. On page 31, he writes, "First, I want to distinguish faith from belief because faith is not identical with belief, but it is the ground of a certain kind of belief." 2, in the three ways, that you can distinguish between faith and belief. 2, belief is in solo intellectu, while faith is in re. In solo intellectu means that it is only by intellect that we know these things. So that when you read a story, when you read lore, when you read mythos, you can just read it and understand it, and that's all you need to believe, right? That it is only by intellect that we believe. But he says that in faith, it's in re. In re means in the matter of. So, if we were to take this and try to understand the difference between solo intellectu and in re, both are Latin terms. In solo intellectu would be equivalent to, say, a legal case. Say, for example, where there's two clear, there's definitely two clear sides to one position, that one may have. Roe versus Wade, as an example. You see what I'm saying? There's definitely distinctions, right? And it is in that land, that realm, that we are actually dealing with belief. But in re, if we were to take, say, another legal case of, say, I need to declare bankruptcy, then that means that that it only involves an idea, and ideas, are matters of, if you will, and those ideas go beyond us. They're out of our control, right? There is no side. We know. There's nothing that's going to oppose us because we know what we're doing. We're declaring bankruptcy. And that's the difference between in re, which is faith, which would be the declaring bankruptcy, versus belief, which is in solo intellectu, which is also, say, Roe v. Wade, because there's two clear signs. So as we begin to open up this picture more, as we begin to open up this picture more, we're starting to see that faith is so much more complex than belief, right? And finally, 3, out of his three, ways to distinguish faith and belief. He says faith is given to us. On page 33 of his thesis, it reads this: now third, I'd say that faith is a gift, not an attitude stuck arbitrarily, not an alignment chosen at will. Listen to that again. Now third, I say that faith is a gift, not an attitude struck arbitrarily, not an alignment chosen at will. So that means that it is a gift, okay? And we all have access to that gift. That is faith. Belief isn't a gift, okay? Belief is an attitude struck arbitrarily, and belief is an alignment chosen at will. I want to go into these three arguments just a little bit more so that you can also identify with me and hear these arguments played out, because I think that would be a little bit better for you guys to get a better chunk and sense on what this distinction really is and how he distinguishes between faith and belief in these three ways. Argument one, okay? Faith is not identical to belief. That's the basic premise of the argument. I write, faith is the ground for our belief regarding things to be hoped for, and it takes the place of a proof for what has no appearance. You could read everything you want in folklore, but that doesn't mean you come face to face with Andagda. It doesn't mean you come face to face with Druid. Okay? And that's what he's getting at. He's like, you could believe what you read. You could say, yeah, that happened, whatever the case is. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it goes any farther than that. If it's a gift, it has to go farther than that. Especially if it's a gift from the god or gods of your understanding. In other words, I write, faith is non-apparent. Faith is non-apparent. Belief is apparent. And that's what he means by, faith is not identical to belief, because faith is in the realm of things that aren't apparent, and belief is in the realm of things that are apparent. That's what makes you believe them. Argument number two. Belief is in solo intellectu. Faith is in re. And I gave you legal cases to think about to see that there's a clear line in solo intellectu of two opposing views, Roe v. Wade, and in re that there is no opposition. It comes from the matter of. It comes from what is your matter made of, because it's about the self. I write, faith is the tacit, implied, implicit recognition that nothing is ultimate and that there are no clear divides. Belief demonstrates clear divisions. So faith, okay, says that nothing is ultimate and that there are no clear divides. You're not fighting with yourself about something. You know something, and that you have to, go beyond that to work to get out of your own situation. Whereas belief, you can clearly see the difference between both sides, and that's the difference between in solo intellectu and in re. In other words, I write that belief, okay, is only in the mind, meaning it is based in the totality of your intellect, where faith, okay, is only in one's drive, meaning it goes beyond intellect. It is your heart, soul, mind, and spirit. Belief is and deals with things that are real, but faith deals with things that go beyond what is real and the things that go beyond what are real. And when we start really getting into faith, you start thinking that actually belief is more on the side of cosmos, whereas faith is actually on the side of chaos. Argument 3. Faith is given to us. This is the idea when he says it's a gift and it comes from the God or gods of your understanding. I write, God or source is not somebody, and the gifts of God or source are not temporal transactions. They're not temporal transactions, okay? Meaning they don't exist for a certain amount of time. Think about it like this. When you were a kid, you learned stuff, and when you learned that stuff, it was for a temporary time, okay? Then when you moved up and you got older, you learned more things. Those things were for a certain amount of time. When you grew up and you got even older than that, you learned things, and that was from for a certain time. They were temporal transactions, things you believed. The things you believed that when you were a kid are not the things you believe now. That means that they were temporal, that means they were transactions, and that means that they were finite. In other words, I write, faith, right, can't, if you will, be prevented. You can't prevent faith. You could prevent belief, but you can't prevent faith. You can't hold it back. You can't stun it. You can't grip it. You can't put it in chains. But belief, you can do all those things too. Okay? In conclusion, belief is bound. Belief is based in nurture. It is based in effect. Okay? Belief would be the world of communism. Faith, on the other hand, is not bound. Faith is freedom. Faith is based in nature. It is based on affect. It is based as if you were living in a world of capitalism. So that belief is nurture. Faith is nature. Belief is effect. Faith is affect. Think of it. Do you really have to think about something when you respond with your look? If you hear a funny joke, you naturally smile. You don't have to think about smiling. You don't have to debate it. It's just what it is. It happens. It's natural. And if you were to take two political science philosophies, I would say the belief is in the area of communism and that faith is in the area of capitalism. In summary of the words of His Eminence John Wordsworth, I'm going to read to you a section on page 30 of his thesis. Let me just take my glasses off, it'll be a little easier for me. Belief and faith in modern usage differ chiefly in that belief, as a rule, suggests little more than intellectual assent. Faith, on the other hand, implies in addition the element of trust or confidence, i.e., or cf., belief in God with faith in God, as one in whom persuasion and belief had ripened into faith. And that is a wonderful way to summarize tonight's talk. If I were to guess if the Druids were men and women of faith or men and women of belief, I can almost guarantee you that those holy ancient men and women, those most holy ancient Druids, were of faith. And even though they knew that their baseline had to be belief because they had to interpret what each Celtic tribe, Gaulish tribe, depending on the timeline, and the era, I should say, and the age, whether it's the Iron Age or the Bronze Age or the Neolithic Age, right? I think that they would absolutely focus on faith, and they had to, because if they didn't, they would never hold the power that they held. Good night, everybody. Whatever time you're watching, make it great. And I'll put this on YouTube, and it'll be my first YouTube video. And like I said, my first Facebook video that I've had in quite some time. Again, I want to thank everyone who has seriously done some ritual and prayed for me in my greatest need, because without you, I wouldn't be here tonight. I'd be focused on other things. And now for your blessing. May the gods bless you. May the goddesses keep you. May the mysticals shine their light upon you, and may your ancestors remain with you and walk with you forever and ever. Gidawin. Gidawin.